Imagine walking into your bathroom tomorrow morning. The toilet is there, the sink is there, but the toilet paper is gone. So is the bidet, so is the soap. Now remove the running water, remove the plumbing, remove the walls, the floor, and the door. Keep going. Remove every store that could sell you something. Remove every factory that could make it. Remove paper itself. You are now standing in an open prehistoric landscape with one extremely ordinary problem. You just pooped. What happens next? A large leaf is nearby. So is a patch of grass. There is water down the hill, a smooth stone beside your foot, and one hand you would rather not discuss. Any of those might work, but choosing badly could leave you irritated, dirty, or carrying fecal material back toward your food and family. Choosing nothing does not sound especially appealing either. Early humans solved problems far more difficult than this. They made cutting tools. They controlled fire. They shared food, cared for children, treated injuries, and survived dangerous animals. But did they really wipe their butts? It sounds like a joke until you try to prove an answer. Leaves decay. Grass disappears. Water flows away. Snow melts. Wood rots. A smooth stone can survive for thousands of years, but it does not arrive in a museum carrying a label that says what touched it. Even human waste usually disappears. The behavior happened every day, yet nearly every part of it was designed by nature to vanish. That makes this one of archaeology's strangest problems, and the first important answer is not a leaf, a stone, or a splash of water. It is that there was never one completely clueless first human trying to invent bathroom hygiene alone. Human evolution did not work like a light switching on. No baby was born into an empty world and suddenly had to create hunting, language, childcare, and wiping before lunch. Every early human had older group members. Youngsters watched adults, they copied movements, learned safe places, and absorbed habits long before anyone could write them down. No one needed to carve bathroom instructions into a cave wall. They did not need a formal lesson called Prehistoric Hygiene 101. Ordinary behavior can pass through generations without leaving a single word behind. That means the real question is not who invented wiping. It is whether some form of cleaning was already part of much older primate behavior, and how that behavior changed as humans entered different environments. Unfortunately, there is no fossil of a habit. An archaeologist can identify the sharp edge of a stone tool because repeated use leaves recognizable damage. A butchered bone can preserve cut marks. A hearth can leave charcoal, heated sediment, and burned fragments. But imagine a person using a handful of leaves once and dropping them on damp ground. A few weeks later, the leaves are part of the soil. 10,000 years later, the entire event is invisible. This is called preservation bias. The past does not preserve everything people considered important. It preserves what happens to resist decay. Stone survives better than skin. Bone survives better than grass. Pottery survives better than water. That is why the Stone Age may look far more stony to us than it felt to the people living in it. Their daily world was probably filled with wood, fiber, bark, hide, plant matter, and other materials that archaeology frequently loses. If early humans used soft organic material after defecating, we should expect most of the evidence to be gone. But absence creates a dangerous temptation. It is easy to look at a nearby plant and declare, "They used leaves. Mystery solved." That is possible. It is not proof. The same is true of moss, bark, grass, sand, snow, stones, shells, water, and bare hands followed by washing. Humans have used an extraordinary variety of cleaning methods across recorded cultures. Those methods show what people can invent. They do not tell us exactly what a particular Paleolithic group did. So researchers turn to something even less glamorous than a broken stone tool: ancient poop. Under rare conditions, feces can dry out, freeze, become mineralized, or remain protected inside a cave or latrine. Archaeologists call preserved human feces paleofeces, or coprolites, depending on the context and degree of fossilization. To most people, it looks like something to avoid. To a laboratory, it can be a biological time capsule. Plant fibers can reveal food. Tiny bones can reveal small animals or fish. Pollen and seeds can help reconstruct diet and season. Chemical traces can help distinguish human waste from animal waste. Parasite eggs can reveal infections that followed people for thousands of years. This sounds like the evidence we need, but it fails at the final step. A parasite egg can show that someone carried whipworm. It cannot show whether that person used water or grass afterward. A seed can pass through the digestive system and identify a meal. It cannot identify the object held in someone's hand several minutes later. Ancient feces can tell us what went into a body. It is much worse at telling us what cleaned the outside of it. That failed answer gives us something important, however. Feces was not merely unpleasant, it was dangerous. Human waste can contain organisms that move through contaminated hands, food, soil, and water. Early humans did not need germ theory to notice consequences. They could see flies gathering, they could smell contamination, they could experience itching, irritation, stomach sickness, and diarrhea. They could notice that some places around a camp became unpleasant or unhealthy. Disgust is not just modern politeness. Researchers consider it part of a behavioral defense system that helps humans avoid likely sources of infection. Feces is one of the strongest and most consistent triggers. That does not prove a particular wiping method, but it makes total indifference unlikely. Cleaning the body was only half of the problem. The other half was deciding where to leave the waste. For a small mobile group, the simplest sanitation technology may have been distance. Walk away from the sleeping area. Avoid the place where food is prepared. Do not contaminate frequently used water. Covering waste with loose soil or plant material could reduce odor and contact. We cannot assume every group followed those practices, but each choice would provide an advantage without requiring a toilet, a sewer, or any knowledge of bacteria. This produces a surprising possibility. The first major human solution to poop may not have been an object used for wiping. It may have been the organization of space. Where do people sleep? Where do they butcher animals? Where do they throw food waste? And where do they defecate? Those decisions can leave patterns even when the cleaning material disappears. At a prehistoric hunter-gatherer-fisher site called Rinukalns in what is now Latvia, researchers examined waste accumulated between roughly 5,400 and 3,200 BCE. Microscopic analysis, chemistry, and sediment patterns suggested that people were not dropping every kind of waste randomly. Food remains, burned material, craft waste, and excrement were deposited selectively in a shared area. That is evidence of collective waste management among prehistoric people. It is not evidence of toilet paper, but it shows that communities could organize human waste deliberately long before modern sanitation. Once a group stays in one location longer, the problem changes scale. One person leaving waste is manageable. Dozens of people doing it every day create a landscape problem. Add children, food scraps, animal remains, and dogs, and yesterday's convenient corner can become today's terrible campsite. Mobility can remove people from accumulating waste. Permanent settlements cannot escape so easily. Villages therefore encouraged pits, dumping areas, designated spaces, drainage, and eventually latrines. The history of the toilet begins partly as the history of humans becoming unable to walk away from their own mess. But we still have not answered what touched the body. To approach that question, researchers sometimes study documented practices from more recent societies. This requires care. Modern hunter-gatherers are not living fossils. No community alive today is frozen in the Stone Age. Every society has its own history, neighbors, exchanges, and inventions. But cultural variation demonstrates a basic principle. There is no material that humans naturally and universally choose. People use what works in their environment and what their community teaches them to use. Near reliable water, washing can be practical. In a forest, soft plant material may be easy to collect. In open dry country, people might rely on dry vegetation, earth, or other available objects. In a cold environment, snow may be available while liquid water is not. Some historically documented societies used smooth stones, pieces of pottery, cloth, sticks, shells, or other materials that sound uncomfortable to anyone raised beside a soft white roll. The goal was not always modern medical cleanliness. The goal was to remove enough material to feel comfortable and return to ordinary life. That ordinary life also affected the solution. A person traveling light cannot carry an endless supply of anything. A person living beside a river has different options from someone crossing a frozen plain. A child may need help. An injured or elderly person may depend on someone else. The method was probably not only environmental, it was social, and that is the part no discarded leaf can preserve. Then archaeology finally gives us something far more direct. Not from the earliest humans, not from a Paleolithic cave. From a 2,000-year-old relay station on the edge of the Taklamakan Desert in northwestern China. The station was called Zhuangquanji. Travelers and government officials stopped there while moving along routes that became part of the Silk Road. Archaeologists excavating its latrine found narrow wooden or bamboo sticks. Cloth had been wrapped around one end. Dark material was still attached. Under a microscope, researchers identified fecal material and the eggs of several intestinal parasites. At last, the object, the residue, and the toilet context pointed in the same direction. These were personal hygiene sticks used for wiping. One of the parasites created an additional surprise. Chinese liver fluke needs wet, marshy conditions during its life cycle. It could not have been acquired in the dry desert surrounding the station. Someone had carried that infection from a wetter region far to the east or south. The wiping stick did not reveal the first human solution. It revealed a sick traveler moving disease across an ancient transportation network. One tiny object answered a hygiene question and opened an entirely different story about migration. Other historical societies developed their own solutions. Ancient Greek and Roman sources refer to small rounded stones or pieces of pottery sometimes called pessoi. Some may have been used after defecation. If that sounds uncomfortable, your instincts are functioning correctly. Softness was apparently not guaranteed in the ancient world. Then there is the most famous ancient bathroom object of all, the Roman sponge on a stick. The usual story says people in public latrines used a sea sponge fixed to a handle, rinsed it in water, and sometimes shared it with the next visitor. It is memorable because it combines Roman engineering with a complete rejection of personal boundaries. But the evidence is less certain than the internet often suggests. Ancient writing mentions a sponge-tipped stick associated with a toilet. Roman latrines also had water channels that could have been used for rinsing. Yet some researchers argue that the implement cleaned the toilet rather than the person. It may have functioned more like a toilet brush. The shared sponge story might be true. It might be partly true, or modern retellings may have turned an uncertain object into an irresistible, disgusting fact. That uncertainty is exactly why everyday archaeology is difficult. A strange object survives. A short sentence survives. The normal user never explains the obvious details because everyone around them already knows. 2,000 years later, we are left arguing over which surface the sponge touched. Roman sanitation creates another contradiction. Roman cities built sewers, aqueducts, public baths, and multi-seat latrines. Some toilets carried waste away with flowing water. That sounds like a major public health victory. But studies of Roman-era parasite evidence found no clear reduction in intestinal parasites. Whipworm and roundworm remained widespread, and may have become more common in some regions. Public baths could circulate contamination. Human waste used as fertilizer could return parasite eggs to crops. Shared facilities could bring many bodies into contact with the same surfaces and water. The Romans built impressive sanitation infrastructure without understanding the complete biological system around it. They could move poop without reliably breaking the path from feces to food to another person. That is an important distinction. Looking clean, smelling better, and preventing infection are not always the same thing. Paper eventually entered this story, but much later than most people assume. Written references to using paper for personal cleaning appear in China many centuries ago. By the late medieval period, paper was being manufactured specifically for toilet use in large quantities. Elsewhere, paper remained too valuable or unavailable, so people continued using water, cloth, vegetation, and locally familiar materials. Commercial toilet paper became a recognizable product in the United States only during the 19th century. Even then, convincing people to purchase disposable paper for an unmentionable purpose required careful advertising. Early packages were sometimes marketed more like medical products than ordinary household supplies. The role beside a modern toilet is not the end point of one universal march toward cleanliness. It is one branch of a much larger cultural tree. Across much of the world, water remains the preferred method. Some people use paper first and water afterward. Some use water and then dry. Some modern bathrooms contain a roll, a bidet, and wet wipes because apparently one ancient problem can support an entire product industry. The variety has never disappeared, it has simply moved indoors. So, did early humans really wipe their butts? The most honest answer is that we do not know exactly what the earliest humans did, and there was almost certainly no single method shared by every group. Some may have wiped with soft plant material, some may have washed with water, some may have used dry earth, grass, snow, smooth objects, or combinations that would surprise us. Some may have cleaned very little by modern standards. Methods probably changed with landscape, season, mobility, diet, age, health, and cultural tradition. What we can say is more interesting than naming one prehistoric toilet paper. Early humans lived socially. They learned ordinary habits from one another. They possessed strong reasons to avoid prolonged contact with fecal matter. Prehistoric communities eventually organized where waste was placed. Later historical societies left direct evidence of dedicated cleaning tools, and every environment offered a different set of possible solutions. The missing artifact is therefore not evidence that nothing happened. It is evidence that archaeology is much better at preserving weapons than routines. A spear point may survive for hundreds of thousands of years. The leaf used on the same day may disappear before the next season. That imbalance shapes how we imagine early humans. We see hunters because their stone points survive. We see butchers because cut marks survive. We see fire makers because charcoal survives. But we rarely see the person cleaning a child, washing a hand, moving waste away from camp, or passing down an ordinary private habit. Those behaviors may have mattered just as much to daily survival. Return now to the modern bathroom. The walls come back, the sink returns. Clean water appears with the turn of the handle. The toilet carries waste away. The paper roll is waiting exactly where you expect it. None of these objects invented the desire to be clean. They packaged an ancient problem into a system so reliable that most of us never have to think about it. That may be why this question feels funny. Modern sanitation hides the chain of decisions behind one small daily act. Early humans saw the materials, the waste, the water, the insects, the smell, and the consequences directly. They did not need our bathroom. They needed a solution available in their world, and whatever they chose was so ordinary that almost no trace of it survived. If the most private habits disappear first, how much of human history have we mistaken for silence? Which everyday behavior that feels completely natural to us was actually taught by people living thousands of generations ago? And if every culture found a different answer to the same human problem, what other parts of modern life do we mistake for the only sensible way to live?